This summer, the man who will be king gave away £1.5 million a year. He did it on purpose. No scandal forced his hand. No court ordered it. No newspaper caught him and made him do it to save face. He looked at a shuttered prison on a cold moor and a town going under with it, and he signed the money away, a future king choosing to earn less. And in the same breath, he did something no heir to this throne had ever done in 7 centuries. He opened his books. He told the whole country exactly what he takes and exactly what he pays. Honestly, most people missed it completely. They were watching the wrong door. They were watching Andrew. They were watching the plane from California. They were watching a family feud they already know by heart. And while every camera in Britain pointed one way, the quiet man did the loudest thing of all. He showed you whose son he is, because that is what this is really about. Not a spreadsheet, not a tax return, not an estate strategy written by men in suits. It is about a boy who walked behind a coffin at 15, grown into the one person who now controls the oldest private fortune this family owns. And in his very first real chance to show you how he will use power, he chose to run it in his mother's voice. Keep that phrase in your pocket, whose son he is. We will come back to it because it is the whole story. And by the end of this, you will see why the palace can do nothing about it. But you cannot understand what William just did without remembering what was done to his mother. So let me take you back, not to the fairy tale, to the truth underneath it. You remember the wedding. You watched it. Most of you live. In the summer of 1981, a 19-year-old girl walked down that aisle in front of 750 million people, and the world decided it was a fairy tale. It was not. There were 3 people in that marriage, and she said so herself years later, looking straight down the camera at 23 million viewers. That was 1995, the panorama interview, the dark eyeliner, the steady, quiet voice. A woman sitting very still and telling the truth about a marriage that was never only hers, while the institution behind her held its breath and began that same week to plan how to manage her. And the year before that, in 1994, Charles had already gone on television and admitted it out loud. He had been unfaithful. The whole country heard him say it. Think about what that means for the woman at home. She had known for years what the cameras only confirmed later. There had been the tapes, the leaked calls, the humiliation dripped out through the papers one cold headline at a time, each one landing on a woman who was raising 2 small boys inside that same house. She was not losing a husband in 1994. She had lost him long before. What she lost in public that night was the fiction that she had ever fully had him. And the palace's answer to her pain then and after was management. Schedules, statements, containment. They treated a broken heart like a press problem. Here is the thing about Diana that the institution never understood. And honestly, I think it is the reason we are all still here talking about her. They gave her a title, a schedule, and a set of rules, and they thought that was the job. She decided the job was people. She shook the hand of a man with AIDS in 1987 without gloves when half the world was still afraid to share a cup with him. She walked through a live minefield in Angola in the last year of her life, and she took her sons to places royal children simply did not go. I want you to hold one of those places in your mind because it is the key to everything that happened this summer. In December of 1993, she brought William, 11 years old, to a shelter for homeless people in central London called The Passage. He has talked about it since, as a grown man. He was anxious walking in. He did not know what he would find. And his mother did what she always did in a room full of strangers. She made everyone laugh. She sat down. She treated the people there like people. The boy played chess. He talked with a man who told him plainly that he had slept on the street the night before, and something in that 11-year-old rearranged itself for good. William said it himself decades later. Until that day, he thought life was only what was in front of him. His mother put a different world in front of him on purpose. If you are a mother or a grandmother, you know exactly what that was. That is not a photo opportunity. That is a woman building a king with her own hands, one room at a time. I cannot tell you what Diana was thinking as she watched her son play chess in that shelter. No one can, and I will not pretend to. But a whole life points one direction, and the man that boy became is the evidence. Hold on to that shelter. We are going back there before this is over. Then came August of 1997. A car, a tunnel in Paris, and a woman who did not come home. She was 36 years old. 2 boys woke up motherless, and one of them woke up as the future of the very institution that had spent 5 years managing her. You remember the walk. You do not need me to paint it because it is already painted inside you. A 15-year-old made to walk behind his own mother's coffin on live television through streets full of strangers who were allowed to sob when he was not. He held it. He gave the cameras nothing. And whatever that silence cost him, he has spent 28 years turning it into something. That is where this story truly starts. Not with money, with a wound. And here is what I keep circling. And I will say plainly that it is my reading and mine alone. The palace wounded the mother, and then, because its own ancient rules demanded it, handed the son the keys. That is a mistake 700 years in the making. And this summer is the first time we can all see the size of it. So, what did the boy do with the keys? In September of 2022, the Queen died, Charles became king, and one title moved on its own, automatically the same hour. Duke of Cornwall. It passed to William by blood, the way it has passed for centuries, with no ceremony required and no permission asked. And with the title came the Duchy of Cornwall. Now, if you have never looked closely at what that actually is, let me tell you, because it is not a house and it is not a jewel. It is an estate founded in the 1300s, 689 years old, worth more than £1 billion. Farmland, coastline, villages, property in London, a whole quiet empire whose entire purpose since the reign of Edward III has been one thing: funding the heir to the throne. It is the oldest money machine in Britain, and in September of 2022, it landed in the hands of Diana's son. Now, most men who inherit something that old and that rich do exactly one thing with it: nothing. They sit on it, they let it run the way it has always run, take the surplus every year, and stay out of the papers. That is the safe play. That is what the institution expects, because that is what the institution has been given for generations. An heir who takes quietly. William did the opposite. He took the oldest thing in his inheritance and started taking it apart to rebuild it. He is selling off around 1/5 of the whole estate, 20%, land and holdings that have sat on those books for lifetimes, gone. And he is pulling everything that remains down to 5 places where he says the duchy can actually change lives. Cornwall itself, the Isles of Scilly, Dartmoor, Bath and the country around it, and Kennington in South London. His own chief executive, a man named Will Bax, described the shift in one sentence that tells you everything about the intent. They are moving, he said, from stewardship to active leadership. Read that again slowly. From holding the land to using it. From landlord to mission. Nobody talks about a 689-year-old estate that way unless the man at the top told them to. And then came the part that made me sit up in my chair. He opened the books. For the first time in the entire history of this title, the Duke of Cornwall put the numbers on the table where you and I can read them. £21.6 million. That is what he took in private income from the estate this past year. And £7.76 million. That is what he paid in tax. That tax figure had never once been made public. Not by him, not by his father in all his decades as heir, not by any Duke of Cornwall ever. The palace line for generations was that the heir pays tax voluntarily, and the amount is nobody's business. William just decided it was your business. Now, here is where I have to be honest with you about how I read that, and I will mark it clearly as my reading, because you could say fairly that this is public relations. A very rich man shows you his tax bill, so you will admire him for it. And you should always remember that royal money reporting depends on access. So the official version arrives pre-polished. I know all that. I hold every palace statement at arm's length, and so should you. But now watch the timing and watch what was happening around this family when he did it. This family has just been torn open by hidden money, by a man who took things quietly in the dark for years and whose whole world came apart when the light finally reached it. And into exactly that moment, the heir to the throne walks out and says, "Here is every pound I make, and here is every pound I pay. Look for yourselves." I do not believe that is an accident. I believe that is a man drawing a line in public between the era that is dying and the reign that is coming. He's telling you, without a single speech, what kind of king you are getting. One who does it in daylight. Make of the timing what you will. I know what I make of it. And the man in the dark half of that contrast is where we go next. Because you cannot understand the light without him. You know what happened to Andrew. But let me put the dates side by side, because the dates are the story. In February of this year, 2026, on the morning of his 66th birthday, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested. The first senior royal arrested in almost 400 years. Detectives held him for the better part of a day, questioning him on suspicion of misconduct in public office, over allegations that he passed confidential government material to Jeffrey Epstein back when he served as Britain's trade envoy. He denies all of it, and that investigation is still running. So we let the law do its work. But look at what had already happened before any police officer touched him. His titles, stripped. His military honours, gone. Royal Lodge, the grand house he clung to for years on the Windsor estate, taken away, and the man moved out to a farm property. And when the arrest came, his own brother, the king, said the coldest sentence a king can say about his own blood. The law must take its course. Sit with the contrast for a moment, because it is the entire point of this episode. One son of a monarch taking in the dark, losing everything in the light. Another grandson of that same line, giving in the light and growing stronger by the day. Same family, same fortune underneath it all. Two completely different answers to the same ancient question. What do you do when the money is in your hands and nobody is really watching? Andrew's answer cost him his name. William's answer is quietly building him a throne. And at the halfway mark of this story, that is the shape of it. Whose son he is. One boy was raised in a shelter's chess games and a minefield's dust. You are watching what that raising produces. But I promised you the whole picture, not just the flattering half. So now we go to the resistance, because not everyone in Britain is applauding this. And a friend who only tells you one side is not a friend worth having. There is a campaign group called Republic, and their whole purpose is ending the monarchy. When William's numbers came out, they did not clap. They said he should be compelled to pay tax like every other citizen, not praised for volunteering it. And they went further. Their argument is that the Duchy of Cornwall should not be his at all. That estate belongs to the state, they say. Bring it under public control, send every pound of that surplus to the Treasury, and let Parliament hand the heir a budget the way it funds everything else. Their spokesman put it bluntly, the duchy belongs to the country, and we should not be paying one man 20-odd million pounds a year by accident of birth. And you know what? That is a real argument, and I am not going to pretend it away or sneer at it. If your concern is that one family sits on £1 billion fortune because of who their ancestors were, then a nicer landlord does not answer that concern. A reformed feudal estate is still a feudal estate. A voluntary tax bill is still voluntary. I hear all of it. Here is what I cannot ignore, though, and it is the detail that tells you who's actually winning. Even his fiercest critics are now arguing about how William gives the money away, not whether he hides it, not what he is concealing. The fight has moved onto his ground, on his terms, using his numbers, which he handed over freely. In politics, and make no mistake, this is politics. That is what winning quietly looks like. You do not silence your critics. You choose the field they have to fight on. Now look at the rest of the board, because the same summer that lifted William has left everyone else exactly where they stood, and the gaps are widening. Camilla holds the title of Queen. She won that long war, and I will not pretend otherwise, but look at what the title actually carries underneath. There is no ancient estate attached to being consort. There's no duchy waiting for her, no 700-year-old machine paying her 20 million a year. Parliament does not even grant her a separate income of her own. Her costs come out of the sovereign grant, the public money that funds the working family, the same pot as everyone else. Prince Philip in his day at least had his own annuity from Parliament. She does not. The crown on her head is real. The ground under it belongs to the rain, not to her. And a reign, by definition, ends. I am not telling you anything has been taken from her. Nothing has. I am telling you what the structure has always said. Quietly, in language older than any of us, what comes with the role goes with the role. Some things in that family are borrowed, and one thing, as we are about to see, is not. And then there is the other son. Out in California, 4,000 miles from all of this, Harry watches. Diana's second boy, the one who, I would argue, inherited her warmth, her recklessness, and more of her open wounds than his brother did. He stepped back from it all in 2020. He is fifth in line now, drifting one place further out with every christening. And whatever you feel about him, and I know this audience holds every possible feeling about him at once, sit with this one fact. There is no duchy waiting for Harry. There never was. The machine only ever feeds the eldest. He got the name, the grief, the memories of that same shelter visit, and none of the inheritance. 2 brothers, 1 mother, 1 set of keys. The rules that made William unremovable are the same rules that left Harry with nothing to stand on but his own story, which he then sold, which is a whole other episode. I have my own view of what Diana would make of where her second son stands today. It is not a simple view, and I will keep it for another day, but the ache of it belongs in this story, because the same charter that protects one son forgot the other one entirely. So that is the board. The critics fight on William's chosen ground. The Queen holds a borrowed position. The brother holds a story. And the heir holds the machine. Which brings us at last to what he actually did with it this summer. Because this is where it stops being an estate strategy and becomes a fingerprint. Come with me to Dartmoor, to a town called Princetown, high on the moor in Devon, remote and windblown and cold most of the year. It is the kind of town that exists for one reason. For generations, that reason was the prison. Dartmoor Prison. 200 years of it. It was the jobs, it was the identity, it was the reason the houses were built and the school stayed open. If you have ever lived in a town like that, a mine town, a mill town, a port town, you know exactly what the big thing at the centre means. It is not a building. It is the town's heartbeat. In July of 2024, the heartbeat stopped. They found radon in the prison buildings, a natural radioactive gas that seeps up out of the granite, invisible, odorless, and in high enough levels, it causes cancer. So they moved the inmates out and the staff with them, and they shut the doors. And they left a whole town staring at an empty future while officials in London decide year after year what happens next. Nobody in Princetown chose any of this. The ground itself betrayed them. And now here is the strange, cold detail at the centre of it, the one most reports skipped past. The Ministry of Justice still pays rent on that dead prison. A lease was signed back in 2022 before William inherited any of this, and it runs to 2033, £1.5 million a year flowing out of public funds into the Duchy's accounts for a building nobody can safely enter. Legal, contracted, owed. Money for nothing, arriving every year like clockwork. Almost any landlord on earth takes that money and says thank you. Honestly, most of us would. It is not a scandal, it is a contract. £1.5 million a year for doing absolutely nothing at all. And William looked at it and said no. He instructed the Duchy to strike that rent from his own income and put every pound of it into Princetown instead, into the local businesses trying to survive the closure, into the youth centre, into environmental work on the moor, into helping a town whose heart stopped to find out what it becomes next. His private secretary announced it with words I want you to hear, because they are Diana's words, wearing a suit. The Duke has seen firsthand, he said, the impact the closure is having on that community, and he believes the money should stay there, helping local people shape their future. Now stop and actually picture it. Put down everything you think about royals for 10 seconds and just see the scene. A future king standing in a cold moorland town, looking at people who lost the one thing holding their working lives together. And he goes home and turns off £1.5 million a year of his own income. So it lands in their hands instead of his. No law required it, no court, no scandal, no camera crew was owed anything. There was only a choice made quietly about what money is for. And now tell me you cannot see her. Tell me that is not the same woman who walked an 11-year-old boy into the passage in December of 1993 and sat him down at a chessboard across from a man who had slept on the street. 33 years between those two scenes. The The boy from the shelter is the man on the moor. That is not policy. That is not strategy. That is a fingerprint. Honestly, it is the closest thing to hearing her voice again that this family has ever produced. She has been gone 29 years next month, and her values just moved £1.5 million. He gave the money away and he got stronger. Say that slowly, because it is the paradox this whole family has been failing to learn for 30 years. In this house, the ones who grabbed in the dark lost everything. The one who gave in the light cannot be touched. Andrew took secretly and his name is gone. William gave publicly and his name has never stood higher. The fortune did not shrink when he opened his hand. The fortune in every way that matters grew. And you might think that is the end of the story, the good prince, the kind gesture, the warm feeling. It is not the end, because there is one more turn here, and it is the one almost everybody misses. It is the reason none of this can ever be undone, and it is the coldest, most satisfying fact in the whole tale. Nobody gave William this power, and nobody can take it back. Think about how everything else in that family moves. Titles are granted and titles are stripped. We watched it happen to Andrew in real time. Houses are offered and houses are taken away. We watched that too. Favour rises and falls with the monarch's mood. Almost everything those people hold, they hold on someone's goodwill. But not the Duchy of Cornwall. The Duchy does not go to a favourite. It does not go to a spouse. It cannot be redirected by a will or withheld in a quarrel or handed to whoever pleased the sovereign that year. It goes to the eldest son of the monarch by blood, automatically under a charter written in the 1340s, older than almost every nation on this earth. The same institution that spent the 1990s managing Diana, containing Diana, outlasting Diana, was already bound, centuries before she was born, to hand its oldest fortune to her boy. Permanently, with no mechanism, none to claw it back. Do you see it now? Nobody had to avenge her. No one had to move against anyone or fight anyone or strip anyone. The charter did it. The blood did it. All William ever had to do was become the man his mother raised and then simply outlast them all. And the machine itself would deliver the verdict. They could manage the woman. They could not manage the rule. And the rule said everything to her son. That is why this quiet summer matters more than any scandal you were offered instead. You were not watching a tax story. You were watching the shape of the next reign unveiled on purpose in daylight. A king who shows you the money. A king who hands it back when a town is drowning. A king who runs a 700-year-old empire the way a woman once ran a room full of forgotten men in a London shelter by treating people like people. She lost the marriage. She lost the title. She lost her life on a road in Paris at 36. And she won the only prize that was ever going to outlast all of it. She won the sun, and through him, one signature at a time, she is winning the throne itself. Whose son he is. That was the question we started with, and I think you have known the answer all along. You knew it before the accounts were published, before Dartmoor, before any of this. You knew it the first time you saw him smile her smile. The money did not create anything this summer. The money just finally gave us all the proof. So let me ask you something before you go, and I promise you, I read every single reply. Think back across the years. What is the one moment Diana made you believe she truly cared? Was it the handshake in that AIDS ward when the whole world flinched and she reached out barehanded? Was it the minefield Was it a hospital bed she sat on when protocol said stand? Whatever your moment is, put it in the comments and tell me about it. And then tell me honestly whether you saw the very same thing this summer in what her son just did with £1.5 million and an open ledger, because I think you did. I think that is exactly why you are still here, 29 years on. Some people leave a fortune behind. She left a way of seeing people, and this July, we all watched it inherit a kingdom. I will see you tomorrow.